Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to talk about the debut album from Vince Staples, titled Summertime '06. So I've gotten a couple of requests to cover the XXL freshman list for 2015 over the past couple of weeks, and I have even less of a reason to do so than last year. I mean, seriously, Mick Jenkins drops The Waters and you instead find room to put Kid on this list? At this point, if we needed any more evidence that XXL is struggling for relevance in the internet age, it's here. And at this point, it's just sad. Although, there is one choice they made correctly though, and it's the one that everyone and their mother knew that they would. Vince Staples, California MC, most famous with his collaborations with Odd Future, especially with Earl Sweatshirt, and hot off of a great 2014 where nearly all the verses stood out on their respective albums, especially on Common's most recent record, Nobody's Smiling. It helped that Vince Staples has a way with bluntly effective lyricism that didn't shy away from speaking some pretty hard truths, most of which reflected his time as a gang member, fit the tone of a year where rap music was forced to confront some very harsh political realities. Go with the fact that he worked with great producers like No ID and Evidence, there was a lot of hype behind him when he dropped the damn solid EP Hell Can Wait last year. As such, I was definitely curious to see where his debut album Summertime '06 would fall, especially considering it was a double album for a debut that still managed to run under an hour and was executively produced by No ID, which is a good sign for me. So, how did it turn out? Well, this is one of those albums that feels like it should be so much better than it is. I've been listening to this album again and again, and believe me, there's a lot to like about Vince Staples' debut that proves that he could really be a great artist somewhere down the road. But as a whole, this album feels scattershot. Several great ideas buried amidst a slew of underwhelming filler and half-baked tracks that feel less bad than just incomplete. If you go digging, you can definitely extract a certain amount of raw punch to it, but considering so much of Vince Staples' appeal is his straightforward, blunt honesty and presenting his ideas, it's a little worrying how much of it feels buried amongst gangster cliches and unfocused ideas. And that's not saying this album isn't good, it definitely is good, but I gotta be honest, I wish it was better. So okay, the best place to start would be Vince Staples himself. And look, as an MC, I mostly like him. Even though his personality can feel a little bit over-restrained and his voice lacks an immediately distinctive flavor or charisma at a couple points, he's got some versatility as a rapper in terms of his flows and his dramatic range. Yeah, there are some flubbed or forced rhymes on this record, fair number more than I was actually expecting, which was a little bit disappointing. And there are tracks, particularly in the back half of this album, where it feels like he's playing things a little bit too basic with his flows, but for the most part, he's all too convincing as the hardened, technically strong street rapper with a conscious edge that he needs to make this album work. Of course, this record immediately splits into a number of tangents, so beyond songs like gangbanging, we also get tracks about selling drugs, talking about girls, and the latter of which pulls this album on its most notable tangent across the first half of this album, where his life feels like it's careening out of control as he's addicted to this girl, and he uses her love as a stabilizing force, one of the only stabilizing forces he has. That girl's played by a couple different guest stars, with Calm Intensity from Jhené Aiko, Raw Passion from Snoh Aalegra, and Hushed Whispers from Kilo Kush, and they all fit together pretty damn well with the impressively bleak atmosphere of this album. The other guest stars, though, don't tend to fare so well. The majority of this project is Vince Staples' affair alone, which you do need for a debut album, with the only guest rappers coming from Aston Matthews, who brought a lot of personality, but not exactly a lot of technical rapping skill. But as for the hooks, well, I'm not sure if it's a heavy use of buzzing autotune that's very reminiscent of the final tracks on Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but I find myself not nearly as drawn to them as I want to be, with the big exception being on Might Be Wrong with James Fauntleroy and the Cocaine 80s, which also features a spoken word digression from Haneef Talib that hit home pretty powerfully, really well done there. Hell, I didn't even mind Future's hook on Senorita, even though that might have been that I could barely figure out that was Future until I checked the credits. He doesn't use so much autotune there, honestly sounds a little bit better, but it's still one of the few times I actually enjoyed a Future hook. That's saying something. Now, a large part of this ties back to the production, and just like Vince Staples' friend Earl Sweatshirt, this album starts dark and it stays there, ditching the dense, often suffocating atmosphere of Earl's most recent album, I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, for something that's much more empty, the mix filled up with textured bass kicks and beats and very sparse, often very faded melodic progressions. On the one hand, this can work very well in cultivating some impressive atmosphere, the faded synths on Lift Me Up, the gospel-esque vocals against the rattle and Jump Off the Roof, the eerie trap beat of Senorita that has this great evolution as the track mutates with some gothic swell, the waves of synth and tinkling percussion on Might Be Wrong, and even the pummeling bass on Street Punks that I liked. No ID handled the majority of the production on this album, and his commitment to some organic depth and great textures really does show, especially in the introduction of that killer guitar melody and synth progression on 3230 that has a snarled lo-fi depth I really liked, or in the washed out desperate hope of Summertime that hit me surprisingly hard with those guitars. It almost made it up for this how slightly overmixed that song Like It Is feels, especially especially with the synths that just ran over Vince's spoken word pieces, just didn't quite work for me there. But really, most of this album sticks with bass-heavy tracks with only fragments of a melody captured in some of the vocals. And this starts to become a problem as these songs start to run together and don't really have a lot to make them stand out. I mean, sure, the production's very good, I like it, but especially on the back half of this album, it feels like songs are lacking a distinctive instrumental identity to make them stand out from the rest, or at least add a little bit more dimension to it. Though with a feeling of very bleak emptiness in the production that relies on some overly extended outros, it oddly feels like this instrumentally on this album is stretching for ideas that don't quite pay off as well as you might think. And the odd thing is that lyrically, this record is overflowing with the more conceptual framework to hit way more effectively than it actually does. This album is structured into two main discs, the double album, and frankly, the second disc doesn't have nearly the same punch as the first one does. Part of this comes down to Vince doing a great job setting up the scene early on, where gangbang is the only life that he knows and he's searching for his way out of it, but he also knows the best way to do it is play off of a life story that others will not understand at best and glorify at worst. And the fact that it's a fragment of love, a girl who will look past what he does and love him all the same and stay with him all the way, is what gives the careening danger and recklessness of the first half of the album some dangerous punch and some real human stakes and emotion behind it. The second disc gets a lot more political, and moments like Might Be Wrong and Like It Is have some excellently articulated social messages I really liked, contributing to many of the same themes of depression and lack of escape that drove To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. Now, I mean, sure, they want to get out of that system, but when you have that system that cuts down black men with no repercussions for the perpetrators, and then rewards black men for killing each other by romanticizing the gangster lifestyle, it's hard to find that exit. That's one of the reasons the song Surf stands out to me as a real standout potent track. I mean, sure, Vince Staples takes shots at both wannabe gangsters and girls who get screwed up on drugs and do everything they can to get popular, but then the hook comes in. It was almost as a response to him, showing they're just following the example that hip-hop set for them, that he might have set for them, so what more can he ask them for? That's a potent, powerful theme that I really dug. I wanted to see him explore more of it, if only this record had the focus to dig deeper here. See, as much as I love the social narrative and Vince's arc in finding love in a hopeless place and finding some personal responsibility without the need for larger society's brand of respectability politics, it's a scattered narrative. There's so much more that Vince could have unpacked in the lyrics in these songs to carry both more of that personal and social punch, but instead we get filler track after filler track of gangbanging, violence, and slinging drugs. And believe it or not, I wouldn't exactly have a problem with this. I might typically would, considering I'd say they were glorified, but I get the purpose here, except for three reasons. One, it often feels like Vince Staples starts kind of repeating himself, especially on the second disc. Two, the sequencing of these songs often feels like a potent social message is being undercut. You have a really good song that might be wrong, but then you pair it off with Get Paid right after. It just feels awkward to me, which sure may have been the overarching point, but it doesn't help. And finally, number three, the individual songs aren't entirely that interesting. I mean, I like the bloody 3230 and the dramatic juxtapositions of Lift Me Up, but beyond that, doesn't really have the element of storytelling or sharply descriptive imagery or even great wordplay to really grip me here. They come across like filler to pad out a 20-song double album, when this could have been slashed down briskly and reordered to maybe 13, and it probably would have been a hell of a lot stronger. But you know what, in the end, I really do like Summertime '06 by Vince Staples, but not as much as I really wanted to. It's a promising hip-hop debut, probably one of the most promising of this year, and I certainly prefer Vince's more insightful thoughts than the basic beyond words gangster rap of YG or something when it comes to West Coast MCs. But I don't know, I was expecting a little bit more from this, and I do wish this record had cut some of the wheat from the chaff. Could have been a little bit tighter, a little bit better. For me, it's a light 7 out of 10, definitely a recommendation, but a bit of a qualified one. Vince has come harder in the past, both on his EPs, his guest verses, and his mixtapes, but I get the feeling he's got more to show us. Definitely worth a listen, but then again, I want to hear more. Thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums you want me to cover, I'd be more than grateful. Leave comments, tell me what they are. On that note, on July 10th, I'm going to be covering an album that you guys requested from 2014. Could have been an album I already covered, could have been an album that, hey, I might have just missed the first time around. So, leave your comments saying that this is the album you want me to talk about, and make sure to tag it as 2014. I'll count them up. The one that gets the most over the next couple of videos will be the one I choose. Currently, right now, one album is very much in front, so just keep that in mind if you're going to be suggesting something that's beyond that, or if you want to have a fighting chance. Oh, also, if you're going to be spamming my comments, as some of you have been doing, I do check. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.